morning on this rainy Sunday morning, and today I am going to discuss the serious subject of Bigfoot. No, I'm just kidding. Actually, out of all the different things you can find on the internet, I actually like the fact that people are out in the forest and woods trying to find a Bigfoot. They're doing, so who am I to take that adventure away from them? I think it's great. The world needs more Bigfoot hunters. Today, I'm going to be talking about short bows and the advantages of them. Sometimes, if you're not heavily involved in the subject of archery or primitive archery, it comes down to a question. I like long bows, I like short bows. But we're not really talking about why. You always have to ask why. Now, an advantage to long bows, definitely, is the stability of shooting, a long draw length, amongst other things. Plus, honestly, who doesn't love the look of a classic English style longbow? I think they're gorgeous. More power to them. Whoop, excuse me. Still a little sniffly. It's probably the weather. On the other hand, what are the advantages of short bows? Well, I can think of a couple. One is the economy of materials. I'm going to take this string of this short bow that's in this quiver, and I'll explain it later. Economy of materials. So, there I was walking through the woods. I like these there I was stories. Let me unwind this thing. And I came upon a dead deer. I don't know why this deer, live deer, met her final demise, but there she was. The meat would be kind of sketchy because I don't know how long she was sitting there, predated by, other creatures, but what you can have at the end of the day from one deer is a decent sinew bowstring. You also have, this was made from the leg tendons, so there's short sections all kind of twisted together, but there's also the silver skin, which in the case of this deer was gone, because the silver skin goes around, say, the tenderloin, that big grouping of muscles that runs along the spine. So that was gone, but most predators don't go after the ankles because there's not a whole lot there to munch on. And so, even after time, even after, in the case of a stinky deer that you would find, the tendons aren't necessarily stinky. They can be, trust me, but you still wind up with a marvelous material. So this is like a deer's worth of tendons just happened to be found to make a bowstring. And as you can see, let's line this up. If I was to try to string a long bow with a deer's worth of tendon string, it wouldn't work. And so in that way, short bows have their advantages. Strings. You think of, putting it back, taking it. It's really obvious. I'm just kind of lost for words here. I'm still working on my coffee here for morning, my liquid crack. The bow and the string. And a lot of people, and it's easy to understand why, don't really give a lot of thought to the string because it's so easy to go and buy a roll of B50. But when you think about it, how exactly from natural materials are you going to make a string that's strong enough? Now this bow that I keep showing you and I'm putting down and showing you, I'm not going to do it anymore, you're going to have to remember, is a heavy bow. It can pull at a long draw length upwards of 70 pounds, which means it has to have a very strong string, which this tendon material, the sinew, is able to handle. You can make a sinew string for a bow that's 70 pounds easily. And it doesn't have to be any bigger really in diameter, that much bigger than a B50 string because it's incredibly strong. Now, if you're not going to find a deer laying around, or squirrels to make, say, twisted squirrels, a twisted squirrel rawhide string, you're talking plant materials, it depends on where you are. If you're in a region where yucca fibers are available, they can make pretty strong strings. If you're in Michigan here, you have, say, the inner bark of trees. There's some different materials that you can find, but generally speaking, plant material strings here in Michigan are limited in strength, so you're going to be limited to, say, lighter weight bows, which are fine. Now let's just go on to, say, an advantage of short bows, another one. I'm just going to set this right down here. Okay, so I have this quiver, which was made from black ash, gathered here, gathered the black ash, pounded it to separate it along the growth rings. Black ash is marvelous material. Then you can further split those to make them finer. And I wove this basket. I have a little circle of birch bark down there, but it's a little less than 36 inches long, which means that if I have a short bow, this is an ash bow, made from an ash tree that was here. I should have heat hardened it really before, I brought it out, because ash, especially a short bow, can benefit from that. It's sinew backed. This little short bow can fit in this quiver and be, carried around, hands free, so I can do other things. And it's similar in function to, say, the planes from North America, the horse bows, because they would be typically held in this really neat system that was a bow case, a quiver, and then it would have pouches for like a awl or fire making tools and stuff. So it was a self-contained survival living unit, and it works the same way with this. I've seen pictures of an otter quiver that Ishay made that had the arrows and his short bows in there. So, there's practicality to be concerned with. Now, short bows have shorter draw lengths, which means that ultimately they have, say, less cast than a longer bow. But when you're thinking of practicality again, and you hear this so many times, even with large game, deer, you talk to even compound bow hunters, and you hear this, that they typically take deer closer than 20 yards away. Realistically, with compound bows especially, I'm looking at my shooting before I gave mine away. I just gave my compound bow away. I didn't have much use for it. I could hit tight groups at 80 yards. I mean, tight groups at 80 yards, but no way would I ever hunt or shoot at an animal that's 80 yards away, because in the time it takes for that arrow to leave the bow and hit the target, it's long enough for that deer to move and then get a bad shot, which is worse, much worse than, say, a complete clear miss. I'd much rather get a clear miss than like a bad shot. And so, even with these little shorties, at 20 yards with the limited cast, they are hunting weapons. And so you don't need to think of hunting in terms of long-range shooting. I think the closest I've ever got a deer was like 5 yards. If you set up, and I didn't hunt from like a platform over a bait pile or anything. It's more like a stalking ambush, reading them and knowing where to be. And so the closest I've gotten, I think, was 5 yards. Here and about, I didn't measure it off. I'm just going to say close. So, yes, short bows, decent hunting weapons. They can be compact. I keep twisting this way. And so I want to give you some things to think about. My last major thought in this video is strings. Think about strings. If you're in primitive archery, learn how to do the 2-ply reverse twist. If you're in primitive archery, think about learning how to make sinew bowstrings, making twisted rawhide squirrel, and you're going to say, like I did before I really started thinking about it and working with it, well, what about deer hide, deer rawhide? Well, it so happens that if you have a 1-ply, just a single piece of rawhide from a deer hide, because it's thicker than a squirrel, that ultimately you're going to have a less durable string than if you made it from very fine rawhide and used multiple strands. You're going to get a more even string, and you have more strands to help support it than just a single strand that might just break. And so squirrel hides, in my experience, make stronger strings than deer rawhide strings. You also need to be able to make strings from plant material, whether or not it's, say, the inner bark of honeysuckle, or in this case, this is going to blow your mind, it's thick. Well, yeah, and you can see it's not as strong, but you can make cordage, there was a weak spot there, out of grass. This is grass. I wouldn't use it for a bowstring, obviously, but learning how to make cordage is a big thing too. It's been abraded. This is actually sweetgrass. Inner bark honeysuckle, the inner bark of, say, basswood, yucca, of course. There's a lot of different fibers, and so I'd encourage you to learn how to make cordage out of different plant materials. That would be a good thing too. And of course, I'm going to encourage you to go out and find adventure, whether or not it's Bigfoot or learning how to make fires with a hand drill. It's more than just learning how to make bows. It's learning the whole scheme of how to use natural materials. And with that, after my fail, John's fail with a sweetgrass bowstring. No, I wouldn't use this for a bowstring. But I'm just kind of using it to demonstrate cordage. Now with that, I'm going to say goodbye. Thank you for watching, and it is now the 16th or 17th, I don't know, I have a hard time keeping track of days. This week, I am going to get my shiny new camera that will allow me to edit so I can get into like build-alongs and more involved stuff. And one of the build-alongs I want to get isn't strictly a build-along, it's egg tanning. Egg tanning a deer hide. I've got plenty of deer rawhides laying around here, and I'm going to take one and show you how to egg tan. Thank you. Thank you for your viewership. Thank you for your civility. We are the Primitive Bow Crowd. We're a civilized bunch. Have a great day.